I have given a name to my pain, and it is Bat Guano. Forever. I think that's good enough, no? Okay. Right. A long ass time ago, we sampled some home video games based on the much beloved Joel Schumacher film Batman Forever. It was beloved, wasn't it? Anyway, whatever your thoughts on the actual film, the games themselves were glorified Bat Guano, essentially a beat-em-up with Mortal Kombat controls, a concept that would later be revisited with Mortal Kombat mythology Sub-Zero, so this game had one fan at least. I had previously sampled the SNES, Genesis, Game Boy, and Game Gear versions, and they were all pretty terrible. But there was also a DOS version of this game that people say is the best version of the bunch, and I had no intention of finding out. But some folks believed that this encounter was going to be an inevitability, and sooner or later I'd be revisiting Bat Guano Forever in video game form. Well, you assholes out there have been waiting for that day to come, and that day is not today. Because in addition to porting their rubbish console game over to MS-DOS, Acclaim Entertainment and developers Guano also ported the Batman Forever arcade game. How many people knew that Batman Forever had an arcade game back in the day? I did, because it was on the cover of Electronic Gaming Monthly magazine, and the first thought that crossed my mind when I saw it was, what the fuck happened to Batman? He looks hideous. So yes, through means of dark magic and a CD-ROM full of abandonware that I was gifted from a friend some time ago that I completely forgot about, long story, I now have a partially working copy of Batman Forever, the arcade game on MS-DOS, which was released in 1996, about a year after the film's release. I say partially working because this version has no music, which I presume were tracks played off the CD, which I do not have, obviously. That's unfortunate, but still a small sacrifice to be made finally to be able to play this after all these years. I do know that there are also Saturn and PlayStation versions of these things available, but I've never seen these, so I'm assuming that these are rare, expensive, and probably not worth jack shit. Unlike the console versions, Batman Forever Arcade is a side-scrolling beat-em-up where everything is pre-rendered in CGI and thus everything looks light, cheap, plasticky, and very shiny. Okay, let me be honest here, because I actually did play this in the arcades once upon a time as a younger fellow, and I thought this looked pretty slick for its day. The animation was smooth, the visuals were sensory overload felt to this very day, your life views were changed after playing 5 minutes of this game, and your senses were heightened. Before they were grounded back in reality once you played a round or two of X-Men vs. Street Fighter, so you could remember what a good game played like, but I digress. So yes, to the best of my recollection, the Batman Forever arcade game wasn't very good, but it was certainly an experience that stuck with me. This MS-DOS version may not be the best representation of that arcade title though. Maybe it's the compromised state of my copy that's at fault, but at the same time, I've had DOS ports of arcade and console titles that weren't exactly top-tier ports either, so I don't think I'm being off-key in giving this a look in this state, and I could get the music elsewhere if needed. Anyway, you could choose to play as either Batman or Robin or both if you're playing 2 players, and despite outwardly appearances and some minor differences in attacks, both play pretty much the same way. That is to say, poorly. It's a side-scrolling beat-em-up where you beat up a bunch of grunts and move to the right, all the while random numbers denote 100% damage, 12-hit combos, double, triple, mega, hyper combo pop-up things that give you seizure, and that's before the dithered flashing screens pop up for whenever you collect enough power-ups to execute an outlandish animation that will grant you a temporary power boost or something. At the same time, defeated foes will drop pickups, either power-ups to build up your power meter, rare health pickups, or one of the multitude of weapons that can be used a few times before expiring. These include batarangs, bat bolas, taser guns, and a grappling hook that has Batman grabbing foes and playing more in-your-face animations. It goes without saying that the main alleged highlight of Batman Forever the arcade game, the graphics, are severely compromised in this port. It's dark and grainy, it's difficult to make out some of the background elements and moving objects, especially when you got all this other stuff popping up on screen to sort of blind you and sort of And on top of that, the frame rate is way too choppy and honestly causes more problem than it's worth. It becomes a mess and a struggle to keep up with whatever's going on screen, especially with the clutter bad guys filling the screen and killing the frame rate even further. I'd imagine this probably would look better slightly on the console side of things or even a proper DOS machine, but as it is now, this is a dreadfully murky looking game with a rather unstable performance. And that unstable performance plagues the game's alleged playability. Control is straightforward, comprising a jump button, a punch button, and a kick button. These on their own work fine. Apparently certain button combinations execute certain attacks, making it possible to perform 100-hit combos or something like that. All I do is mash buttons and different moves occur. Sometimes they hit, sometimes they don't. I couldn't really tell because the frame rate is kinda trash. At the end of each stage, you get bonuses for certain goal posts hit. High score bonus, big combo bonus, hero bonus, a bunch of other stuff. These produces icons that you could pick to give you a different bonus for the next stage, whether it be boosted weapons or weird things like hollow mode that creates 4 back clones that seemingly even the odds but only serve to clutter the screen even more. Like I said, the whole thing is a bit of a mess, which makes it difficult to play, and even if the game were operating at peak efficiency, which this is not, Batman Forever is just a mindfuck of a game. You push buttons and stuff happens. You don't know what's happening, you don't know why things are happening, they just do, and you hope you can somehow manipulate things to work in your favor. Before you give up, turn off your PC, dust off your old Super Nintendo, and play Batman Returns instead. This is another case of a game tossing random shit to a wall and seeing what sticks, except you're playing with the shit that slid off the wall and use your imagination. Batman Forever Arcade has options that let you set your difficulty. You have 3 settings in that regard. Number of continues you can set up to 7, as well as configure your button mappings for either keyboard or joystick controls. Basic stuff with that last one, sure, but you'd be amazed by how many games even today lack this basic feature. So like I said, the version I have of Batman Forever Arcade has no music because we're using dark magic to play this shit, although I have sampled some of the soundtrack online, and presumably some of that you're listening to in this video, and I gotta be honest, the music here isn't half bad. Obviously they don't use the actual movie soundtrack, though they do have a respectable cover of the Batman Forever theme, or whatever you want to call it. The tracks do try to follow in that similar musical style, and they're okay at best. Certainly far better than the fart noises you got in the console versions, by the way. The music on MS-DOS for that game isn't any better, just letting you know. The sound effects are a bit on the crunchy side, but they're not terrible. Game has some voice bites that are sound-alikes, and they tried, I guess. That's all I can really do. I don't know. Overall, Batman Forever, the arcade game on MS-DOS, is not very good, and unfortunately a lot of it is plagued by shoddy performance and an unstable frame rate, which affects the playability of the game, which already has this feeling of random shit happening on screen that makes you wonder if there's anything that could be salvaged here that's actually worth salvaging. Had this run a little better, the game would have been playable somewhat to a degree, and even then I'd still play this over the console's take on Guano forever. Regardless, Batman Forever, the arcade game on MS-DOS, is one riddle that is best left unsolved.